Welcome to the Jennifer J Hammond podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day. Jennifer is grateful for the opportunity to educate, empower, and inspire you with powerful conversations, insights, and new viewpoints. Here's your host, Jennifer J Hammond.
This is Geoffrey Berwind, and I'm so excited. Today we have somebody who's a dear friend of mine, but also someone who is, I want to say, like a magician with storytelling. I mean, and so powerful in teaching you how to speak in powerful, powerful ways. So this is Geoffrey Berwind. Welcome to the show, Geoffrey.
I've been called many things, Jennifer, but no magician now. So I've got to pull something out of my hat. I don't wear hats though.
But I bet you do have a hat. Come on, it's cold in Philadelphia.
A straw boater. It's like so worthless, but it's awesome. It's
funny because I think always we have some kind of story to share. And so often people don't know how to share their story in a way that really is compelling. So I'm going to start with you using an example of sharing. How did you stumble into storytelling? Because when you were little Geoffrey, a little boy Geoffrey, did you ever think you would become this master teacher of storytelling?
Never in a million years. No, I think a lot of life is stumbling into the next thing. You know, anybody who says that I've designed my whole life at age 10, that's the exception. Most of us are like, So I was brought up by my grandparents, and looking back, Nanny, my grandmother, we had a sort of a broken upbringing in terms of my parents. My grandparents really brought us up, and Granddad was in retail. We're outside Philadelphia. Nanny she was just so funny. And you remind me of her, except much younger. They're no longer with us. But looking back, she kept the family together around the dinner table, telling stories of these goofy things that would happen to her. I mean, she sassed, an admiral of the Navy. She did also, just crazy things. And we just roared with laughter. And, it was a bit of a tough upbringing. So we went over to their house around the corner to just hang the family together. So storytelling keeps people together. I like to say it brings us back around the dinner table.
And storytelling has been one of those things for eons. I would say from the Bible, there are all the parables in there. But if you meet with Native American from all over, all different tribes, they'll also tell you that their history is oral history. And so the storytelling around a fire in a teepee, I have heard some of the most amazing stories. And it's so powerful. But also, you probably remember, was it, oh my gosh, now his name just went out of my head. I hate when that happens. It like seeped out the back hole in the back of my head. The rest of the story, the radio show gentleman who used to, was it Paul Harvey? Oh, am I saying it wrong? The one who used to tell the rest of a story, and it made us all tune in and lean in for that.
If you think of any book, any good book, any great speaker, anything, I feel storytelling is the glue that holds everything together. Look, how long have we been around as a species? Like a million years, more or less. Modern technology is just that. It's like just happened. We've communicated, we've processed our lives around the primal campfire for a million years. It's how we process. So storytelling has reemerged, even though it's the oldest thing we do. It's reemerged over the last 15 years or so because of the dominance of technology, the over information, right? Don't you find some days you have so much coming at you information wise that your brain is exhausted, right? And so storytelling is the antidote or the counterbalance to that. It does different things to the brain. That's what's really interesting. There's science behind storytelling. A number of years back when the MRIs really became common use, they studied what happens to the brain when stories versus information is shared. Storytelling it inhabits the reptilian brain, the primal brain. And, the key technique in storytelling is paint pictures.
Yes.
You know that in your profession, you paint pictures, theater of the mind. Storytelling does that like nothing else. And so one of the things I teach my clients is when you're making a presentation or in your books or whatever it is you're working on, make sure you don't mix information and teaching and advice with storytelling. Let the story be the story. It'll teach itself, for one thing. A lot of people wonder, well, which story, do I have any stories to tell, or which stories should I use professionally? Yeah, you need to figure that out. Some stories have more weight than others or another use. But, most of our life stories have life lessons.
Right.
Well,
and I was thinking about this story I've heard you tell before when you first, you went to the historic Philadelphia.
Well, I actually was in the middle of reinventing my life. I was brought up, as you know, by my grandparents, and I was an art history major at George Washington University. So helpful for career purposes, but it was a good education. And got out of school, started running the retail stores outside Philly. And in my late 30s, it was time to close them. Just things had changed. And I found myself looking down that dark hole of like, I have no future. I don't know. What am I supposed to do here? But
I always call that what am I going to do when I grow up?
Yeah, well, then you realize at some point you never want to grow up, and nor should you, right? It's like, let's have some fun. Seriously. So I had to reinvent my life, and I had no idea what to do as an art history major, but I'd also had a business side. So I started a theater outside Philly as a way to economically help a small town. And in that, did some outside the box stuff to draw attention to the theater, sold out most of our performances, and that got me on the radar of a nonprofit called Historic Philadelphia, which was founded by then governor and mayor, first mayor of Philadelphia, then Governor Ed Rendell. And this is in the early 2000s. And they wanted to start a project called Once Upon a Nation. In fact, one of the signs is right behind me, those of you who are watching this. And it was the idea of, on the streets of Philadelphia, for free, a tourism project that would tell real life stories of American history, dry topic, boring topic, but it doesn't have to be. And I was their first storytelling / artistic director, and we figured out a way to make this dry topic come to life. But before we figured out a way, we had to create the idea of it. This was early, sort of in the pioneering phase before storytelling really exploded again. So here we are trying to make a dry topic come to life. And God bless the people who run this organization decide to roll out the project before it's fully tested. In front of the press. We did a press conference with TV, radio, and hey, I know, says the executive director, let's invite the big cheese, the funder of the whole thing. Let's invite the governor of Pennsylvania. So I'm like, oh my God. First of all, between you and me, I'm trying to reinvent my own life. Everything hinges on this moment. This organization, before we've rolled it out, have no idea if it's going to resonate or not. And again, what it's designed to do is street theater. It's semicircular benches in the historic district where the country started. So in front of the National Constitution Center, in front of the Betsy Ross House and so forth, 13 benches, like 13 colonies. So this press conference, we've beta tested a little bit some of these stories. And so it's a day in May, beautiful day in May, 5th and Arch. And we invite the press. We're waiting for the governor. We're pacing. It's this little Quaker meeting house that we're holding the press conference in. Finally, we hear a commotion outside in the streets. 2 big black SUVs pull up. 2 big bodyguards come through the door. And Ed Rendell, who's a wonderful guy, very, very upbeat, positive. He comes in and he's shaking hands and the TV cameras are rolling. And I'm in the back going, why are we doing it this way? And he sits down. And after a few opening remarks, one of my trained storytellers started telling a story. And now I'm watching, you think I'm watching the storyteller? I'm watching him, because the whole project could have come to a halt if he didn't engage to it. And so she's telling the story of this during the British occupation of Philadelphia. Lydia Dara, an old 80-year-old Quaker lady, her house is commandeered by the British High Command. Now, back then, and in most cases, people were divided about what they believed. So a third were loyalists to King George, a third wanted out, and a third were like, I don't know. But Philadelphia was like, party, the British are here, let's party. Well, not everybody. And Lydia Dara was a patriot, secretly. So one night, she hears a commotion downstairs, and my storyteller, Jill, is starting to unfold the story, and I'm watching the governor, and I'm pacing in the back of the room going, ah. So she starts telling the story where Lydia creeps downstairs to listen in the keyhole of the British High Command. So right now, George Washington and the army is out in White Marsh, Pennsylvania. And this was not at a good point in the Revolutionary War. And she overhears them. Now, if they had opened that door, she would have been hung for treason like that. She hears them planning a surprise attack on Washington's army the next morning at White Marsh. She creeps back upstairs. This is 80-year-old diminutive Lydia Dara. And I'm watching the governor of Pennsylvania, and I could tell he's watching and listening, but he's also on his BlackBerry. Remember BlackBerries? And he's listening to his aides. He's on his BlackBerry, and he's looking up, and he's listening to his aides. I'm like, is this going to work? Is this whole thing going to collapse? And my own personal story is, am I going to be, what's going to happen here? So Jill gets to the heart of the story where Lydia decides, I know what I'll do. I'll get a pass to go through the British sentries to go get some flour at the flour mill at White Marsh. So the next morning she goes on these dusty roads, leaves Philadelphia, and behind her, she could hear the sounds of the troops massing for the surprise attack. And I'm still watching the governor, and he's still looking at his BlackBerry, and he is listening, but he's distracted. Will this work? Will the storytelling project be dead in the water? Well, she gets to the heart of the story, which we had carefully scripted and crafted and practiced, even though it was delivered very spontaneously. And we take to the story to the point where Lydia is on this dusty road on the way to White Marsh. The whole Revolutionary War was hinging on this moment. And she paused and looked up to heaven and prayed that she'd get there in time. And there was this pause. And in that moment, I saw something which changed my life professionally, and saw something that started an inquiry that I'm like, what did I just see? Because what I saw was the governor of a major state, Pennsylvania, all of a sudden look up, put down his BlackBerry, put down his technology, stop listening to his aides, and was totally fixed on that story for the rest of the story. And that moment launched our project. And it showed me, one of the keys of storytelling is pivotal moments. And it was such an epiphany, but I didn't know quite what I had seen. All I knew is I saw somebody put down a distracting, addictive device of technology in favor of something else that was just coming out of somebody's mouth. What? And we launched the project. It's been running for 18 years, won national awards. And now when I tell that story, I always get somebody going, excuse me, so what happened to Lydia? I'm like, well, do we speak with a British accent? No, it sort of worked out. And it was really cute. We knew our prime audience are families coming to Philadelphia to see the birthplace of the country. About 2 weeks after the project launched, we got this wonderful email from this little girl, like an 8-year-old girl. She said, well, before coming to Philadelphia, I don't know if I really liked American history, but now I'm playing a Quaker spy in the swimming pool with my brother. And I'm like, that's so not historically accurate, but that's also awesome. So that was my origin of my work. I mean, it ties back to my grandmother early days, how she kept us together. But I was trying to reinvent myself. We were trying to really invent a new project in historic Philadelphia. It's about a story of a country trying to invent itself. Yeah. So storytelling, you can call it an origin story, the origin of your work or your idea. What was this thing you saw or did or realized that changed everything for you? And don't you feel like in your life, can't you look back and go, yeah, these are pivotal moments and you have stories behind them?
Yeah. And I was just thinking one thing might be fun if you're up for it, Geoffrey, is I would love to share. Recently, I was taking a walk and I realized that there was a pivotal moment that happened to me when I was in high school that really gave me, honestly, a big insecurity. And I would love to share this story and then see if you can possibly help me figure out how could I make that story better.
I'd love to hear it.
Did I get it? Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, I had, similar to you, I had a lot of challenges when I was a kid. So I all of a sudden ended up in high school where my big brother had unfortunately been he had gone to live with my dad, and my sister had been taken out by, my mom was declared an incompetent mother. And so she ended up living in a foster home. So I'm in high school in Key West High, and I have two very musically talented siblings. My sister is an incredible singer, and my brother, as you know, is an amazing guitar player, and he loves, passionate about teaching people. But so I have these two very talented. I have never thought of myself as talented in any way, shape, or form with music, but I always wanted to, and I really wanted to be able to sing and play instruments. So I tried out for our choir in high school, and I made it. It was my last year. It was my senior year. And so we get into class, and my teacher says, "Wait a minute. Okay, you guys sing again." And then he said, we all sang whatever song we were singing. And he points out, "Jennifer, you are horrible. You are so off key. It's really important that you sing as quietly as possible so that you don't mess everybody else up." And so his desire to obviously make the choir sound better so that he looked better was just to make me shut up. It wasn't to help me fix what I could have fixed, or if I couldn't have fixed, whatever. He didn't really want to teach me. He just wanted to shut me up. And I didn't realize until recently, someone said, "Hey, oh my gosh, you have a good voice. Why don't you ever sing?" And I immediately, I felt terrible, because I realized I still am living in that moment where he repeatedly said, "You always sing off key, Jennifer. So you need to sing as quietly as possible." Basically, he would say, and he was pretty direct. He would just say, "Shut up," all the time to me. And it was funny because it's a moment, I haven't even thought about that story in years until someone just said something nice to me about my voice. And I was just singing along with a song or something. And I thought, wow, what a pivotal moment that still many, many, many decades later, I am still affected physically. I can even feel it, how much that impacted me, what he said. So I'm just curious, Geoffrey, and, I'm curious on what kind of advice would you give me to...
Well, what's at least there's many lessons in this story. What's one lesson, if you were going to tie that to teaching something from that story, what's a lesson that you would tie to the teacher?
Well, for me, I think number one, a teacher who's actually interested in teaching is somebody who is incredibly powerful and leaves an impact, but also one who is not good can leave a lasting impression as well. So when you decide to do something, I think it's important that you decide to do something well. And if you're not going to do it well, again, what I also realized, one of the other lessons from my viewpoint on that was status. For him, it was all about his status, that his choir sounded good, even if it was just really a facade, that he just had a few good singers, and then everybody else who wasn't singing well, he just made us, pretend to lip sync and be fake. And I think that being fake is never, ever going to serve you well in your life. So anyway, I guess there's a couple things that I see in there, but yeah.
Look at the power of somebody else's words to build or destroy. Words count. Words count. Your story reminds me of my favorite movie, possibly, The King's Speech, about the true story of the World War II King George, who had a bad stutter. And it took a teacher to believe in him. He ended up being the counterbalance to Hitler, who was an amazing communicator. And there's this amazing scene in the middle of this where his voice teacher, who has no official training, but they're in Westminster Abbey getting ready for his coronation, and he goads the future king. And all of a sudden the king says, "I have a voice." And there's this pause, and the teacher says, "Yes, you do." And this guy brought England through the Blitz and through the power of a teacher to build or destroy, the power of all of us to give words of hope or encouragement, or destruction and discouragement. And so how to make that even better? Well, where I went with it, knowing you, I said to myself, yeah, it's your origin story. You know why? What have you done for years? You are a voice giving other people a voice. And you had an early experience where your voice was shut down. So for me, it's like, wow, full circle. Things are redeemable in God's good earth, right? So that horrible experience, you have years and years as one of the foremost communicators on radio and podcasting, all these things you do, but you're also, not but, extremely generous in spirit. So he was miserly in encouragement, and you. So these things that happen to us, they suck, but they also make us who we are.
Yeah.
How would I make that story even better? I think I would have liked to see even more scene painting lead up to him. Let me see him a little bit physically.
Right.
Let's see if I wasn't sure if you were standing or sitting. What I find in storytelling, one little visual details, even sounds and smells. We humans are still creatures, meaning the senses.
Right.
What's interesting thing is when you use storytelling as a presenter, you never need slides. In fact, slides interfere with the story. This is the theater of the mind. These are movies in our mind, images. But a wonderful story, which I'd like to, that's one of your origin stories to me. It's, we heal others by the wounds we receive.
I agree.
I really believe that.
I really, when I realized that story, when I was just taking a walk the other day, and I realized, wow, I haven't even thought about that in so long. And I realized, again, like you just said, if I retold parts of that, I would think about how I was standing among all of these other people, and I immediately started to shrink. And I think shrink in spirit, but also shrink in that I tried to see if I could kind of be hidden behind the others, since I was the one who was off key, and I got called out. I just wanted to shrink and be forgotten. And it's weird because at that time, I think I probably made a decision that, that old saying that you probably heard from your parents at one point, it's sometimes it's better not to be seen or heard, to be kind of disappearing from life. And I think that ironically is what I tried to do for the next, couple of years. The next phase of my life was try to disappear. And I did find my way into blossoming, later, but I had to really heal that. And I haven't really thought about him in years because I was just thinking about my brother, and I wanted to sit and find a way that we could create songs together. And my sister, I'd like to see if we can create a little, the idea of that kind of Brady Bunch thing. And I thought, I wonder. And then I started thinking back and I thought, oh my gosh, I remember how painful it was to be standing there, because we were rehearsing on a stage at the time when he said that. And I remember he was this, gray-haired, short man who, came stomping. You could hear his feet bang, 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 bang as he walked across the stage. And he's like, who is that who's singing off key? And of course, I didn't know I was singing off key. And then when he figured it out and called me out, and I just, I felt again like I was shrinking. And
that's normal. Do you know how normal that is? And even as adults, we don't want to be called out in front of our, we're communal people, right? And so he did something terribly wrong to you. But the power of that story is we've all received injustice.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about storytelling. It makes us relatable and it connects us to each other. So as you were unfolding your early upbringing, what did I say to myself? Me too. Me too. Me too. So storytelling is the original Me Too. It provides a science of storytelling in our brains. It's called neural coupling and mirroring. Our brains are naturally, without any effort, and it's not narcissism, our brains are naturally looking for how am I in common with Jennifer? How is Jennifer and I like each other? That's we humans at our best. It's like, how do we share the same existence? Because we do. So your story, we want to think about the stories we tell, and your story totally works in terms of the universality of it. It's universal, where anybody hearing it, but I had something like that in my life. Or maybe I did that to somebody else.
Right.
Stories have the power to see. If you simply taught is like, words count, be careful what you say to somebody because you get destroyed. People are going to be like, yeah. But if you just tell a story and let it teach itself and let people, because you want people to enter the story with you.
Yeah.
And that's why when you're telling a story, don't teach. Maybe afterwards,
right,
reveal the lesson learned, but not in the story. Just let the story be.
And I love it. Well, I was going to say, I love what you said about the senses, because it started making me think about, it was Key West. It was always super humid. It was super hot. And I remember, the smells, unfortunately in very humid places, it smells kind of damp and musty and maybe.
That's a nice touch.
And so you're not feeling those kind of smells don't make you feel like you're in a clean space, which also makes you feel a little bit.
So, and was this the first time you were in the room?
Yeah.
So you could even maybe build up. You want to build up to the crisis moments, and you build it up very well. Even more could be seeing you walk down the hall. Remember the walking down the hall, the Wizard of Oz, before she confronts that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You could build it up like you get super excited that morning, and like, I'm going to sing in the choir. I don't know if I can. And we see you walk through that door, and we see you take your place. You could play with also, is there anybody else, a young person near you, a fellow classmate who was singing gloriously, and you already started going, we could add another character. So the whole choir is a character to itself, and the teacher. Right now, there's three major players, right? You, the teacher, who's the antagonist. You're the protagonist. But there's also all these witnesses. And if he had said that to you alone in the room, it would not have had the devastating effect as in front of all your friends and peers.
Yeah.
That was wrong. It was just wrong.
And it felt really like that was one of the things is all the eyeballs looking at me. And I had not more than one person, there was a boy I thought was cute that that looked at me again, like with that kind of disapproving, like, what are you doing messing us all up, kind of look. And that, of course, makes you feel that awful pit in your stomach, like, oh no. Yeah.
No, it's a powerful story. And again, you tie it into sometimes we need to be able to tell stories simply for ourselves. Yeah. And it's I also call an origin story, the why I do what I do.
Yeah.
You give voice to so many thousands of people. You're the voice giving voice. And yet somebody in your past shut down that voice. So it's this full circle, very interesting journey.
Yeah. Well, I am so grateful. Thank you so much I just love having you on the show. And of course, I'd love to have you back and talk about other things, go a little bit deeper, but I know that they always give me a time restriction. So I want to make sure I ask you my favorite question that I love to ask everyone, which is, I'm famous for saying, yay, to the point where I know it almost gets annoying.
No, it doesn't.
Well, I would love to ask you, what do you do to create yays in your day?
Well, I'll tell you the latest, I need new adventures. If I get bored, that's the kiss of death. And so I stumbled on something late last year, and I'm about to show you a picture on my phone, and we'll have to describe it for your listeners. But every Saturday morning, I'm outside Philly, and I have a little place up in Bucks County, beautiful Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And every Saturday morning at 7:30 a.m., come cold or warm or rain or shine, I am volunteering at a donkey sanctuary. What? Yay! And here's a picture 2 weeks ago with me and Belle.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
It's so awesome. And because I love books, and I stumbled on a book called The Wisdom of Donkeys, because I love the idea of dogs and nature, and I'm just fascinated. And I'm like, donkeys? And I realized we don't know it. There are 5,000 years of history as pack animals. They're super smart. They're super chill. And I Googled like donkey sanctuaries in Pennsylvania, 15 minutes from my house. What? It's a nonprofit rescuing abandoned and abused donkeys, giving them a permanent home or getting them adopted. So every Saturday morning, I'm doing Donkey Fitness Club. Guess what that is? It's with a shovel. Give you a hint, a shovel and a rake. And they come next to you and they're like, scratch me, or they ignore you. It's very healthy to be around animals that are not impressed by you. Some are super like, just scratch me, give me a carrot. Others are like, yeah, I'm busy chewing hay. I'll see you next time. So it gives me a yay, and it just makes everything so much fun because it's like so different, so other. Because I think that if we're not exploring, as long as we live and we're not doing new stuff that just interests us, has nothing to do with our business. What does it have to do with my business? Except maybe I'm making an ass out of myself. I don't know. But you know what I mean? So do the things that give you joy, and you don't have to tie it to making money, for God's sake. It's just fun, interesting, and I'm serving. Something very good about I'm shoveling crap. That from an ad? No, really, because I do it all week for my client. No, I'm just kidding. So it's humbling, it's joyful, it's cool, it's different, and it gives me speaking points because I haven't met anybody else who's like, oh yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm doing donkey sanctuary too. I'm like, no, you're not.
No. Yeah, I think that is an absolute new one. I have not heard anyone who's decided, because, I know the people go to these places where they can play with cats or they can play with puppies or something, but a donkey sanctuary is definitely, if I were faster with my wit, I think I'd have a really funny donkey comeback, but I just don't. I think it's adorable. And I love you're getting to know these animals in a way that, well, in some ways is just totally shattering the stereotype of a donkey. Because
totally,
I would never really think of a donkey as wanting to be scratched or being lovable or being
companionable. They've been do you know there's walking tours, professional walking tours around the world with you and donkeys? I'm intrigued by the whole thing. It's so much richer. And, I don't mean this at all. I mean this humbly, but also as a point, which is I've gone into this knowing it's good for me and my soul. And I'm going there as a student.
Yeah.
Like, what do these animals have to teach me? And I'm learning, and there's a lot, which could be another show. But
I know,
there's a lot we can learn.
Talk about all the stories you could tell about donkeys. What did the donkey teach me? You could do 101 things the donkeys have taught me.
How to get a kick out of life.
That was perfect. I love that. So Geoffrey, let's go ahead and tell people if they wanted to get a hold of you. I know you work with Steve Harrison with, I know there's the Publicity Summit, but there's a very specific, the Unforgettable Speaker Training. Will you talk about that?
UnforgettableSpeakerTraining.com. Yeah, I run a lot of our programs here at Steve's company, and this is my speaker training program where I work with people one-on-one and train them on how to go for a TEDx talk. I've helped over 75 people land or craft their TEDx talks, how to use the power of story, create dynamic presentations. So unforgettableSpeakerTraining.com is a best way to really work with me. And except not Saturday mornings, unless you want to be with a donkey and we talk over those big ears. That's the other thing I did. I'm with the donkeys. I'm like, okay, I'm all ears. No, you are actually.
No, that's you. No, that's
you. Well, I'm confused.
Well, thank you, Geoffrey. Geoffrey Berwind, you are a star, and I am so grateful to know you. It's been years and years of a pleasure getting to know you.
Yeah. Feeling, as they said in Young Frankenstein, feeling is mucho.
Mucho.
Thanks for all you do, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you. So as we go out, I will ask you if you would lift your voice and say yay with me.
Happy to. Yay!
Hi, I'm Jack Canfield. You may know me as the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And if you want more help in getting from where you are to where you want to be, I want to encourage you to listen to the Jennifer Hammond Show